Hello everyone, Jace here with a box review of the upcoming main box, Shining Sunrise. So this main box releases on June 30th, so let's go over the contents and see what they have. Let's start off first with the hero support in the deck. First up is the cover card of the set, Elemental Hero Sunrise. This card is great for hero decks and probably replaces Vision Hero Adoration as generic 2 material fusion. The attack gain is minuscule looking, but with just one other monster, he gets a 2900 attack, which is pretty big. The Miracle Fusion effect isn't as good as it is in the Master Duel format though, because we don't have many good targets for Miracle Fusion. But the second destruction effect is way better, because it makes OTKs extremely easy. Next up is Elemental Hero Prisma. It is pretty confusing why it took so long for Konami to release this card. At this point, Prisma is not very good, and the current hero deck doesn't really run fusions with specifically named materials. I guess this is okay for Gladiator Beasts, like back in 2008, but even Gladiator Beasts has better options than Duel Links right now. This card is not that good nowadays, and it really shouldn't be an SR. And lastly for the monsters, Elemental Hero Liquid Soldier. Liquid Soldier is really good for a D-Hero variant of the deck. The on-summon effect can revive his Drowse for another search or back row here, and enable a rank 4 play. The second effect of drawing 2 and discarding 1 isn't as relevant in the D-Hero version, but would be amazing in the Hero Mix version. But the biggest problem with this card in the Mixed Hero variant is that we don't have Elemental Hero Absolute Zero, so even in that version, that effect isn't going off a lot. And lastly for the hero support is Magistry Alchemist. This card is pretty bad, which is probably why it's only an N rarity card. Banishing 4 heroes from grave is just way too much setup for such a mediocre payoff of just reviving a hero. And the second effect to double the attack is not worth the setup of getting another 4 different attributes in the grave. So overall, the hero support is pretty good and does boost heroes, but the biggest issue with these cards is that it doesn't help with the bad turn 1 hero decks currently have. Hero decks are already good at OTKing, and this does help the deck, but we need more turn 1 cards for heroes to actually be meta again. Let's go over to Fossil Archetype next, and let's start off with the card the deck is centered around, Fossil Fusion. Fossil Fusion uses monsters from either player's graveyard as fusion material, and if you use monsters from both graveyards, you get targeting protection. And the last effect is a bit of recovery, so if your face-up Fossil Fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can add this card from your graveyard to your hand, which is pretty nice. So the second effect is really amazing, and works extremely well with the fusion to OTK. And speaking of the fusions, let's go over them. First up is Fossil Warrior Skull King. He has double attack and piercing, making him an OTK machine. Alongside that, he also has a quick effect to steal one of the monsters in the opponent's graveyard, making him a pretty good disruption tool. Next up is the smaller form, Fossil Warrior Skull Knight. He also has piercing, and if he destroys a monster by battle, he can attack again. So basically he's the same as Skull Knight, but with less attack. But where he really differs is his other effect. He has a grave effect that pops a monster by banishing itself. This actually lets him help different decks, like Cyberdarks by giving Claw a good dump target, and Necros by giving Kaleidoscope something good to dump to summon Bionic. The grave effect gives him a bunch of versatility, but he's strictly worse than Skull King in the Fossil deck itself. And lastly for the Fossil Warriors is the smallest form, which is Skull Soldier. This monster has double attacking during each battle phase on monsters, and has a grave effect to add time stream from the deck. And the double attacking is kind of nice, but stats are kind of too low to actually make use of it. The only real reason to run it is for the grave effect to add time stream, and time stream is a card which can help you ladder into higher level fusions from one of your lower level ones. And next up, let's go over the Fossil Machines. First up is Fossil Machine Skull Wagon. It can attack twice on monsters and deals burns when it destroys them. However, with only 1700 attack, it's only really worth 1 for the second effect, which is like Skull Knights, but instead of destroying monsters, it destroys spells and traps. And lastly for Fossil Machines is a smaller version of Fossil Machine Skull Buggy. It also deals burn damage when it destroys a monster by battle, but with only 1400 attack, that won't be happening often. The real effect is in its Grave effect, which searches any of the main deck monsters that mentions Fossil Fusion. And lastly is Fossil Dragon Skullgar for the fusions. It's really just a 2500 attack beater with piercing on field, but the real effect is in its Grave effect, which is actually pretty good because it searches Fossil Fusion. So overall in the fusions, there's only really two you would want to run, being Fossil Warrior Skull King and Skull Knight, and you might run some number of the other ones for their Grave effects. The problem with most of the Fossil Fusions, however, is that there's no good way for a deck to directly dump from extra deck to Grave. The other two main deck cards in this set don't really help with that specifically either. First up for the main deck cards is Miracle Rupture, which is basically Foolish Burial for any level 4 or lower rock. If you have Fossil Fusion in the grave, you'll also get a bonus draw, which is pretty nice. So it being generic, even outside of Fossil Fusion decks, is actually pretty nice, because you can use this in like Magnets or Trinets, for example. In Fossils, however, you'll most often be sending this card, Weathering Soldier. If it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, or if it's destroyed by battle, you can add one Fossil Fusion or one card that specifically lists Fossil Fusion in its text except Weathering Soldier. This is really nice because you can search the Fossil Fusion support like Shell Knight, which you can get from the gym event that's currently running, or you can just get Fossil Fusion itself. And lastly are the leak skills for Jim's Fossil... And lastly are the leak skills for Jim for the Fossil archetype. First up is Fossil Warriors. It adds Fossil Fusion, Weathering Soldier, and Gaia Plate to your deck. It's basically just a skill that makes it possible to summon Fossil Warrior Skull King for the animation, but isn't that bad as a regular skill for the deck. The main draw is that when you get below 2k life points, you can search Fossil Fusion from your deck by sending a rock in your hand to the grave. It's not the worst option, and it also has no restriction to deck building, unlike the other skills, so it actually might be worth considering. Next up is Golem Hole. On turn 2 and beyond, you can discard a level 8 Earth Rock monster that can be normal summoned, and search Fossil Fusion or a monster that mentions Fossil Fusion. However, you can't special summon monsters from their grave during your opponent's turn, and you need to be running only rock monsters and only Fossil Fusion monsters in your extra deck. So this skill would have been okay if it weren't for the fact there are only two different cards that meet the discard card requirement for this, being Gaia Plate and Mega Grandmard. The restrictions are also really dumb and really limit your extra deck. You might actually be better off with the first skill. The last skill from Jim for Fossils is Fusion Excavation. When you have less than 2,000 life points, you can discard a rock monster to add back a fusion spell and turn it into Fossil Fusion. And this skill is just really confusing, because you won't really be running other fusion cards. And Fossil Fusion already has a recovery effect anyway, so this skill isn't that useful. Again, you were probably better off running the first skill than either of these two skills. So overall, the Fossil deck is actually a really good OTK deck going second, but Fossil Fusion requires going second to grant protection, so the deck has no turn 1 play. And the skills are honestly not that great. The first skill is the best one, but even then it adds more cards to your deck, which lowers your overall consistency. And the next archetype I'll be going over is Super Quants. I'm actually really excited for this deck because I love it in the TCG because I love the Power Ranger series. And the first card I'll be going over is the Field Spell because the deck kind of revolves around it. So Super Quantal Mech Ship Magna Carrier lets you discard a card and turn one of your Super Quant Rangers into one of the Zords of the same level, same rank, basically making them one card exceeds and enabling insane plays since it isn't once per turn. The second effect is also the only way for a deck to make the huge Megazord, which I'll go over later, by taking three Zords from the field or grave and using them as material. This card is basically the main playmaker of the deck and what allows it to be good in Duel Links. So now that I've introduced the field spell, let's go over the Rangers and their Zords. So first up is Super Quantum Blue Layer. On summon, she adds any special... What? Not any special. So first up is Super Quantum Blue Layer. On summon, she adds any special... Why do I keep saying that? Any Super Quantum. So first up is Super Quantum Blue Layer. On summon, she adds any Super card to your hand, and when she is sent from the field to the grave... No wait, it's just when she's sent anywhere, right? Yeah, it is. Okay, well, I don't know why I messed that up. Ready to go. First up is Super Quantum Blue Layer. On summon, she adds any Super card from your hand, and when she's sent to a graveyard, she shuffles back 3 Super Quants from the grave to the deck. She's obviously great in the deck, and her Zord is also really good. Super Quantum Mech Beast Grand Pulse is a great rank 3 Xyz, and it just pops any spell or trap. If you have Super Quantum Blue Layer as material, this also becomes a quick effect. It also shares this effect with... Okay, let's just redo that. Super Quantum Mech Beast Grand Pulse is a great rank 3 that pops a spell trap on detach, and with Blue Layer as material, this becomes a quick effect. Being a generic rank 3, you'll definitely see play in decks like Magnet since they already play Alucard, and this has just way better stats than that card. This also has a shared effect with all the other Zords, where once per turn you can attach Super Quantum Monster from your hand or field to this card's material, basically fueling its effect multiple times. And the monster that's the next level up is Super Quantum Green Layer, who can special summon another Super Quant from hand on summon, and when sent to the graveyard you can discard a Super Quant to draw a card. The on summon effect is really good, and getting to cycle through your deck is always good, especially since all the Super Quants float onto this card. His Zord is also really good. Ouroboros is basically a Book of Moon on legs, and with Green Layer the effect becomes a quick effect, so it actually becomes a Book of Moon. I don't need to tell you that Book of Moon is good, so obviously it's a great card, and since it's a generic rank 4, you'll probably see him play in other decks too. It also has the shared effect that Grand Pulse has, where you can attach one Super Quantum Monster from your hand or field to this card's material, which continues to fuel its great detach effect. And the last ranger we have is the leader, Super Quantum Red Layer. He is a level 5 that can special himself if you control no monsters, and when sent to the graveyard it summons a different Super Quant from grave. His Zord, Super Quantum Mech Beast Magnaliger, can target and pop a monster, and just like the other Zords, when you have the correct ranger being Red Layer as material, it becomes a quick effect. It also shares the same effect as all the other ones, where you can continue to fuel its effect by attaching a Super Quantum from your hand or field as Xyz material once per turn. And now that I've gone over the Rangers and all their Zords, we finally arrived to the big boss monster of the deck, the Megazord, Super Quantum Mech King Great Magnus. He is just a monster of a card. When he has 2 or more materials, he can shuffle a card on the field back into the deck as a quick effect. With 4 monsters, he's unaffected by card effects except Super Quants, and at 6 or more, your opponent can add cards by card effects. And then finally, he also floats into the Super Quantum Mech Beasts when he's gotten rid of, even by cards like Santa Claus or Lava Golem. So this payoff is absolutely worth it. But in Duel Links, I don't really think there's a consistent way to make him turn 1, so he's more of a follow-up play after your turn 1 play. They also have the trap Super Quantum Megazord Magnus Slayer, which can boost your Xyz's attack by 100 times their rank, give them piercing, or it can send itself to a grave during the battle phase to give 3 attacks to that monster. It's definitely kind of a mini card, but since it's searchable by Super Quantum Blue Layer, we might just play 1 just for the OTK potential. And the last card in this set is Super Quantum Fairy Elfin. He can make all your Super Quants in the field the same level for Xyz plays, but more importantly, he can tribute himself to randomly get one of the Rangers from the deck to the field, while milling the rest for the grave effects. Even with the RNG aspect of his effect, he's still an amazing card, and definitely a 3-up because he searches all the monsters. Overall, I'm super excited for this archetype. I think it has the potential to be meta with all the quick effect disruption it can put out. And the last new archetype to be introduced into this set is Warrock. Warrock is kind of a joke in the TCG, but I think it actually has some potential here because it is battle phase focused. The most important card is definitely the field spell Warrock Mountain. On activation, you get to add one Warrock monster from your deck to your hand, and at the start of battle phase, if you control no monsters, or all monsters you control are warrior type monsters, you can special summon a Warrock monster from your hand with a different name than the card to control. It also gives your warriors protection, because if they would be destroyed by battle, you can send this card to a graveyard instead. And speaking of monsters, let's go over them. So first up is probably the most important monster, Warrock Forsha. When he attacks, after damage calculations, you get to search the rest of your arc. You get to search any other Warrock card from your deck, and then all Warrock's monsters you control gain 200 attack. And that effect is sort of shared with the rest of the Warrocks, where they all gain 200 attack after damage calculation usually. Next up is Winto, who actually doesn't have that effect. What it does have is a quick effect where you can pay 800 life points, and your battling monster gains 800 attack until the end of its turn. And lastly for the level 4s is Warrock Gaktos. He specials himself if you normal summon a Earth Warrior type monster to your field. And all 4 of the level 4s can share the same effect, where if they're destroyed by an opponent's card effect. And all 4 of the level 4 Warrocks share the same effect, where if they're sent to from the monster zone to the graveyard by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon one of the level 5 or higher Warrocks from your hand or deck. Speaking of the level 5 or higher Warrocks, let's go over them. First up is Mahmoud. So both of the level 5 Warrocks share the same effect, where if you control no monsters or all monsters you control or warrior type monsters, you can normal summon this card without tributing. Mahmoud is special because he has the effect where after damage calculation you can target a spell trap your opponent controls and destroy it. Then all Warrock monsters you control gain 200 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So this effect isn't that good honestly, because it's just kind of slow in terms of destroying spell traps. Usually they use them before you attack. But he definitely has a much better counterpart in Warrock Orpus. His unique effect is that after damage calculation you can send one Earth Warrior type monster from your deck to a graveyard, except itself, and all Warrock monsters you control gain 200 attack until the end of your opponent's turn. So this effect is definitely better. And the last Warrock main deck monster that we're getting is Warrock Meteor Wagon. So it has protection from being destroyed by your opponent's card effects. And when its attack is declared involving this card and an opponent's monster, you can negate that monster's effects, as well as deactivate effects on the field of monsters with the same original name. So it's basically like a Samurai Destroyer for the archetype, which means it can out Bloom Diva. It also has double attacking when using its effects during the battle phase, in which a Earth Warrior type monster battles. You can make all Warrock monsters you can currently control to gain 200 attack, and this card can make up to 2 attacks on that monster. Like, this is just amazing, because like it turns it into a 2000 beater and just enables OTKs out of nowhere. So now we've been over the monsters, let's move on to spell and traps, which are pretty good actually. So first up is Ordeal. It puts 3 counters on itself, and when your Warrocks battle, it gets rid of a counter to draw a card. It can potentially draw 3 cards, which makes it pretty good, but you can only control one of them, so it might be a little bricky at 2 or 3. Next is Warrock Spirit, which is a quick play monster reborn during the battle phase for the archetype. If you revive an attack position, the monster cannot attack directly and its effects are negated, and if you special summon a defense position instead, the first time each Warrock monster you control will be destroyed by battle this turn, it isn't destroyed. This card is actually pretty good even with the restriction on the attack position effect. It can help clear boards or help defend during your opponent's turn, which makes it worth running solely for the versatility of the effect. So the last Warrock card I'll be going over is probably the best one. It's Warrock Dignity. If you control a Warrock, you can either negate a monster effect or negate a spell and trap effect during the battle phase. So this card is great and gives Warrocks an actual turn 1 play, since you can use it as disruption to negate any monster effect your opponent tries. It can also secure an OTK by negating spell and traps during the battle phase, so no Wall of Disruption or Drowning Mirror Force can stop you. So overall, the Warrock archetype does have some promise because Duel Links is actually pretty battle phase centric, and Warrocks thrive in the battle phase, but still gets outpaced by most meta decks, so it won't actually be that good. So next up is the Sacred Beast support. First, they're getting a new skill to help the deck out. Devoured by Sacred Beasts has 2 effects that are each once per duel. The first one lets you trade a 0 attack and 0 defense fiend from your hand to your deck to grab any one of the Sacred Beast cards. And the second effect makes you shuffle cards from your hand or field. And the second effect makes you shuffle 2 cards from your hand or field back into the deck to send 3 Hyperblaze to the grave from out to your deck. And then it adds Fallen Paradise to the bottom of your deck. And Fallen Paradise is an amazing card because it grants targeting protection to your Sacred Beast, and it also lets you draw 2 each turn. However, the Fallen Paradise you get gets banished at the end of your next turn if you play it. The skill also limits you to only Sacred Beasts or the 0 attack and 0 defense fiends. So this skill honestly has way too many restrictions for Sacred Beasts for the deck to actually be good. Like, there's no reason that Fallen Paradise should banish itself during the next turn. However, it's probably the only way to actually play Sacred Beasts, so you still have to run it. So now I've gone over the skill, let's go over the cards in the box right now. So first up is Chaos Summoning Beast. It contributes itself to special summon one of the Sacred Beasts from your hand, and as a grave effect you can add Fallen Paradise from your deck to your hand. This is obviously a staple since it lets you summon the Sacred Beast easier, and you can get Fallen Paradise, which is just an insane field spell. The next monster is Dark Beckoning Beast. On summon, it searches either the Sacred Beasts or cards that list one or more of them by name. So that includes Chaos Summoning Beast and the 2 other cards in the box. It also gives you an extra normal summon of the 0 attack and 0 defense monster in addition to your regular normal summon. So this is probably the most important card in the deck as it searches for anything, and it lets you summon another monster to actually get your play started. And the last monster in the pack is Dark Summoning Beast. Just like Chaos Summoning Beast, it contributes itself to summon a Sacred Beast, but this one is from the deck instead of the hand. With Dark Beckoning Beast, it becomes a cinch to easily get this out and bring out a Sacred Beast, and the floating is okay to search one of the Sacred Beasts from your deck to your hand. And the last card of the set for Sacred Beasts is the aforementioned Hyperblaze from the skill. It allows you to use face-down traps as material for Uriah, and allows Uriah to gain attack equal to 1,000 times the number of traps in your grave or on the field. The second effect also allows you to once per turn discard a card and add to your hand or special summon Uriah, Hamon, or Raviel from your graveyard. So overall, the Sacred Beast support is cute, but like the drawback of the skill is honestly too much, and the payoff isn't that great since Fallen Paradise banishes itself, which is the main payoff of the deck. And next up is the 3 Firefist support cards. First up is the Fusion Firefist Swan, which has a quick effect pop, but only during the battle phase, and it deals a small amount of burn damage on summon. They're also getting another Fire Formation card to help make the fusion easier to summon. Fire Formation Engine just fusion summons a monster on activation, using monster from your hand or field as fusion material. And also if it's sent from the spell or trap zone to the graveyard, you can recover 1 Firefist monster from your graveyard. And lastly for the Firefist support is Firefist Panda. Firefist Panda special summons itself when a Fire Formation is activated, and when it's special summoned, you can bring back one of your other Firefists. Its last effect is protection by sacrificing a Fire Formation instead when your card would be destroyed. So overall, the Firefist support is honestly not super great. Mostly because the fusion only pops during the battle phase, so if your opponent can deal with the fusion before the battle phase starts, they don't have to deal with the quick effect pop. But it's still nice for the deck to have more options. And the last couple cards in the set that I'll be going over are just kind of individual support. So first up is some Gokugoliath support, Gokugoliath. Its effect gives all your monsters 800 more defense, and you can detach a material to add a level 4 Earth Rock back to your hand. It's overall pretty meh, but it is actually pretty good for golden form versions of the deck since it has a high amount of attack. And it's also pretty decent in the new fossil deck to recover one of your monsters from your grave. And the last card I'll actually be going over is Cyberangel Brash. It's a pretty good OTK machine by destroying your opponent's special summon monsters and dealing burn, and then gaining a second attack. It also has a protection effect from destruction by banishing a ritual from grave. And it's really easy to make since it's level 10, means you only need a level 4 like Manju or Senju, and one of Cyberangel Benton or Izana to tribute to use it. So overall this is actually pretty good Cyberangel support, but it doesn't really solve the one issue that Cyberangels have, which is that they don't put up any disruption going first really. And lastly, they're finally releasing 3 selection pack exclusive cards in the box. First up being Black Lizard Soldier Envoy the Being, Archfiend Eccentric, and Rise of the Storm Monarch. So, these cards have already been out in a while, so we already know how good they are, Eccentric being seen play in multiple decks, and BLS being a pretty good finisher in certain Chaos decks. So there's really no surprise there that these cards are good, except for Ryza. So overall this box has a lot of new stuff, and I'm personally super excited for the Super Quantal deck coming out. So comment down below what you think of the new box, and like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of these kinds of box reviews, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!